The Windy West, the Cowboy State, Wyoming. Hi everybody, I'm Connor with Crossbuck RV Transport. In today's video, I'm going to cover everything you need to know to safely transport RVs across Wyoming, so you can have a successful delivery. Wyoming can be problematic to even the most seasoned of drivers, so even if you've made the trip across 1,000 times, I hope you'll stay to watch this and let me know if I missed anything or if you learned something new from this video. This is going to be a much longer video than normal, so I'm including these title cards and timestamps, so if you want to skip ahead to a certain chapter of the video, you can do so. Chapter 1. Weather. If you look at a map, Wyoming doesn't look like a challenging state to drive through. I-80 has long straight runs across the state with only a few grades to pull and descend on the east and west ends. And I-25 and I-90 take the short way across the state on the eastern plains. But it is the weather that claims so many drivers, from RV transporters to semi-trucks. We'll start out east, because most of the time we all run west from Indiana, and this is one of the more challenging areas. Interstate 80 enters Wyoming at Pine Bluffs, and from that moment westward to Rock Springs, the wind is your biggest threat. Generally, the highest winds and blowover risks occur between Cheyenne and Laramie and Walcott. Winds regularly exceed 25 miles per hour, with gusts often exceeding 50 miles per hour. For those who don't know, the industry standard is to park when the winds exceed 25 miles per hour. Wyoming will issue partial closures, including a new partial closure this year specifically for campers and RVs. All campers under 20,000 pounds are restricted. That is what the new signs and closures say, in addition to the usual closed to light and high-profile vehicles. The best advice I have to avoid the wind is to watch the weather apps, and generally, the winds die down in the evening and early hours of the morning. So plan ahead. Watch those weather forecasts when you're a day out coming into Nebraska or even in Iowa. Try to plan your route through the eastern part of Wyoming through the late hours of the afternoon or early hours of the evening, or even the early hours of the morning. That is usually the safest bet. But this stretch of highway isn't just known for its wind. In the winter, snowfall combined with these winds can bring Interstate 80 to a total closure. Snowfall can add up to over a foot, and the wind will blow it over the highway faster than the state plow trucks can keep up. Wyoming Department of Transportation has some of the best snowplow operators in the country, but in the winter months, be prepared for the possibility of shutdowns lasting a day or longer due to high snow and blowing snow. Arguably the most dangerous area of this stretch of highway is between Arlington and Fort Steele, home to the Arlington Pass and Elk Mountain Pass. This stretch of Interstate 80 is one of the most dangerous, even when the snow's not falling. In early spring and late fall, when that snow has already fallen and it melts, it has a tendency to freeze overnight, and you will find lots of black ice, and thankfully, lots of black ice warning and slick spot signs from the state of Wyoming. Ironically enough, despite all of my trips across the state of Wyoming, on the day that I choose to try to film this video and make content, the weather was beautiful. Could not have asked for a better day across Wyoming. Makes for a really crisp video, but it really does not sell just how bad Wyoming can get. Moving west, the weather does become a bit more mild, but can be just as unpredictable. West of Rawlins to Evanston, there is a year-round chance of pop-up squalls of snow and rain. These often aren't detected by radar apps and can appear and disappear quickly. It's not uncommon to go from dry pavement and 70-mile-an-hour driving 1 minute to whiteout 25-mile-an-hour slow down on covered roads just minutes later. This especially presents a hazard on the Three Sisters and their up and downhill grades as you leave Fort Bridger and head into Evanston. Chapter 2. Helpful Apps. Now, hopefully, all that weather talk didn't bore you or scare you away, because it's time to talk about the apps and managing the weather Wyoming throws at us. Drivers today have more technology at their fingertips than ever before, and these apps and web services will help you safely deliver any camper, big or small, across Wyoming. Now, most know the basics. The Weather Channel, AccuWeather, or even the default Apple Weather app are a great start and must haves. But as someone who grew up mostly on the East Coast, the only time we got high winds was with storms and we had trees to block it. As you can see from my video, there's no trees or anything to break the wind out in Wyoming. So these next two apps are a must-have to safely monitor the wind. Wind Compass is a great app to tell you which way the wind is blowing and how fast, right where you're at. I like the simple layout and ease of use to quickly check on the current conditions. Secondly, my pre-planning app is Windy. You can look up the current and forecasted winds, wind gusts, and so much more all across the country. When I go west, I check this app 12 and 24 hours before I hit the Wyoming state line. And it has been extremely helpful in other areas that are subject to high winds like Montana, Utah, California, and more. But as discussed, there's more than just wind out here. And that is where the best app of them all comes in, the Wyoming 511 app. Many states have begun using an app for their 511 services, and Wyoming has one of the best in my opinion. You can easily use the color-coordinated map to see the conditions of the major routes, including interstates and US highways. Another great feature of the app is the live weather cameras. They even have cameras that point directly at the road in some extremely remote areas, so there's no doubt what the road conditions are like anywhere in the state. With these apps, you'll be able to safely travel across the state of Wyoming, make your delivery on time and without damaging your unit, and avoid being that person on Facebook that's complaining because you didn't know the weather was going to be that bad. Chapter 3: Mountains and Chain Laws. Wyoming doesn't have Cabbage or Donner, nor Monteagle or Snoqualmie. It's not famous for its mountains, but it still has some decent grades. Starting out west this time with the Three Sisters. These hill climbs will slow down any truck. Even the 625 horsepower 3406E Cat that I was driving on the day of filming. And what goes up must come down. The downgrades are just as steep, but long, and feature gradual curves, which is likely why there are no runaway ramps on any of Interstate 80's grades across Wyoming. The other notable mountain grade is to the east. Telephone Canyon is a 5-mile, 5% downgrade from Happy Jack Road into Laramie. I always found the name ironic and funny because it seemed my phone calls would usually drop driving through here. But the name is rather historic, being the spot where the first long-distance telephone line was raised to connect Cheyenne and Laramie back in 1882. So as discussed, Wyoming has some mountain grades, but really not as much as a lot of the other western states. And because of that, it doesn't have the carry chain laws that some other western states have, such as Colorado or Oregon. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have chain laws, because it does. Level 1 only pertains to cars or four-wheelers, whereas Level 2 pertains to commercial vehicles. So we're going to talk about Level 2. A Level 2 chain law is when conditions are extremely hazardous, travel can be restricted to vehicles equipped with tire chains or all-wheel drive vehicles equipped with adequate mud and snow or all-weather rated tires. The caveat to that is it also states that under Level 2, commercial vehicles must have chains on at least 2 of the drive wheels at opposite ends of the same drive axle. So that would mean that even if you are in a pickup truck returning empty on your way back to Indiana, you are still a commercial vehicle, so you would still have to chain up. There's very few instances where chain laws do go into effect in Wyoming, and my personal belief in any state is always, if it's that bad that you have to chain up, it's time to park it. No load or no drive back to home is worth your life, especially with a lot of the other yahoos we see on the road that may not chain up properly, and may wreck you or worse. Chapter 4: Seasonal Road Closures. I'm going to keep this very brief. Wyoming has seasonal road closures from November until May. These mostly affect state highways and remote areas that you shouldn't even be on. But it does affect a stretch of US 14 alternate between Burgess Junction and Kane, Wyoming. So if you are going to go to Cody in the winter, which I don't recommend, but sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do, make sure you stay on US 14. Do not think you're going to take US 14 alternate and go sightseeing. You will get turned around. It is closed in the winter. See? That was easy. Chapter 5: Permits and Port of Entry. Now, Wyoming has blessed us RV transporters by making us have 2 permits to go through its great state. The first we're going to talk about is an annual oversized permit. This one your carrier should give you as soon as you get through orientation. Many even have ways to give you a renewed copy in the office or email it to you, whatever it may be. And I'll put a copy of mine from Synergy up on the screen here. The second permit only affects single pull and haul and tow drivers. The second permit is not for multi-haul, and that is because it is a trip permit. The state of Wyoming does not recognize Indiana's transport plates for the trailer that is on the ground. As such, if you are running Indiana state transport plates, you are required to pull into the port of entry and get a trip permit for that trailer that's on the ground. These permits can vary in cost from $20 to $40. They do accept cards at the port of entry, so paying is easy. They are valid for 96 hours. For most drivers, you will purchase this at the Cheyenne Port of Entry, which is open from 6 a.m. until 10 p.m., 7 days a week. On the topic of Wyoming POEs, Wyoming is one of those states where they love to talk to us. Oftentimes, even when empty, after pulling across the scale, they will have drivers park and bring inside paperwork just to do a quick check. They will ask what you're hauling, verify your registration and permits are in order, but they can ask for other smaller things like DOT inspection, lease agreement, and so on. So I always like to bring in my binder and have it all ready for them. If you do this and act prepared and professional, you'll be in and out in minutes and back on the road. Chapter 6: Parking. Most truckers would agree that finding parking is probably the single biggest daily headache in the industry. And in a state that sees regular road closures in the winter, parking needs to be above adequate. Wyoming and its truck stops knew this and they answered the call. Officially, the numbers are nowhere near the big places like Walcott or Joplin. But TA Petro alone boasts 745 parking spots in the state of Wyoming. Many of the Loves and Pilot Flying J's also have larger parking lots or adjacent dirt lots for additional parking when weather gets bad. Plus, the state of Wyoming has a variety of rest areas and parking areas. Some of these have restrooms. Others are just a pull-off with enough asphalt for a dozen trucks and a dumpster for trash. Then there's a couple out there that are really nice, lovely little spots, like my personal favorite, just outside of Wamsutter. This is right next to the Loves. You pull past the Loves, you go around the corner, and there is a big, open lot that no matter what time you go in there, day or night, there is always a spot available. That being said, when the weather gets bad enough, when the snow is blowing and the highway is closed, every one of these spots will fill up. So all that extra parking seems great until the roads close, and when that happens, I hope you found a safe spot very early. Chapter 7: Fuel Stops. Now I know what you're thinking. Wow, Connor, this is the single most exciting thing ever. And you'd be right. This is the stuff I live for right here. Let me tell you folks, the cheapest diesel for most drivers is going to be on the eastern or western side of the state. Who doesn't love cheap diesel? Try to avoid fueling in the middle of the state if you can. The exception to this rule is if you use mud flap. Most guys that use mud flap are running for smaller companies or independents. They tend to get the better fuel discounts in the middle of the state. But for most of you, depending on whether you have ComData or EFS, if your carrier fuels more at Pilot Flying J or TA Petro, your cheapest fuel stops are going to be Cheyenne or Laramie on the east side, and Evanston and Fort Bridger out to the west. These next two tidbits really don't have to do with fuel, but they are fuel stops, so I'm going to throw them in here. Little America, in Little America, Wyoming, has 75-cent ice cream cones. Who doesn't love that? I'm not a big fan of the other Little America locations, like the one in Cheyenne or the one down on 40 in Flagstaff. Those two locations have pretty much turned into a drop yard for ABF and their pup trailers. And I'm sure Little America is getting paid handsomely for that, but there's like never any parking. And if you do find parking, it's going to be noisy because the local guys are dropping and hooking all day long. So the second little tidbit is for my foodies, especially if you want good, cheap food. There are now a bunch of Mavericks across the state of Wyoming that have room for trucks to pull in. These Mavericks have massive burritos that cost you anywhere from $5 to $7. I wish I had taken a picture of one of them just to show you guys, but they are worth every penny. The crappy part is they're not open at nights. Like, they're open, but you can't get hot food at night, so you gotta find them during the daytime. Not really ideal for someone like me who runs nights, but if you can find them, pop in. Get yourself a burrito. They got beefy tater tot burritos. They got steak burritos, breakfast burritos, all kinds of good stuff for my foodies. Chapter 8, Green River Tunnels. On February 14th, 2025, a terrible tragedy occurred in Green River, Wyoming. For those who don't know, 3 lives were lost in the wreck and fire that occurred just outside of and in the westbound tunnel of Interstate 80. The crash leaves Wyoming Department of Transportation and those of us who use it with a semi-permanent slowdown. Currently, the eastbound tunnel was configured for two-way traffic. Concrete barriers were put in place to keep the opposing traffic away. But this has created a new problem: drivers hitting the barriers. At least twice since the reopening, Wyoming DOT has closed the tunnel to reset the barriers after drivers struck them. As you can see, it is extremely tight through the tunnel, with warning signs saying legal width only. That's not an issue for us in the camper world, but if you're worried about the tight squeeze, you can always exit onto Business Route 80 through downtown Green River. Chapter 9. Wait, there's not supposed to be 9 of these. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you appreciate it. I cannot begin to tell you how many hours have gone into this video and filming and post-production and finally getting it out to you guys. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. We are so close to hitting 1,000 subscribers, and I can't thank you guys enough for that. I'm Connor for Crossbuck RV Transport. Take care, stay safe out there.